I thought I knew my wife, Samantha. We had been married for 6 years, and while things weren't perfect, we were a typical suburban couple. I worked as an IT consultant, and she had a job as a marketing director at a local firm. We had our routines, dinner together, occasional movie nights, and the usual ups and downs of married life. Sure, there were some dry spells in our intimacy, but I chalked that up to the stress of work and the mundane nature of adult life. But then I started noticing things. Small things at first. Samantha would take longer to reply to texts, often claiming she was busy. She'd dress up more for work, wearing outfits that seemed a bit too fancy for the office. I remember one Friday evening, she came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. When I asked about it, she brushed me off, saying it was just a new scent she was trying out. I wanted to believe her, but I could feel that pit in my stomach growing. One Tuesday, while I was working from home, I decided to take a break and clean out the car, which was long overdue. As I opened the glove compartment, I found a receipt from a high-end jewelry store, something like Diamonds by Davis. The date was just a few days prior to that Friday she came home late. The receipt didn't just show a purchase. It showed a purchase of a diamond bracelet that cost a small fortune. My heart raced. I knew she didn't have the money for that, not unless she had a secret account that I didn't know about. I tried to push it from my mind, but that evening I confronted her. "Samantha, I found a receipt in the car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's this bracelet for?" She gave me a look of disbelief, like I had just accused her of murder. "Oh, that. It was a gift for a friend's birthday. You know how girls can be," she replied, her tone dismissive, as if I was being ridiculous for even asking. But something felt off. I started paying closer attention to her behavior. I noticed her phone buzzing constantly, her messages requiring a quick glance away whenever I entered the room. There were late nights at work that seemed to pile up, and weekends where she suddenly had plans that I wasn't included in. The feeling of being betrayed hung in the air, thick and suffocating. One night I was going through our shared computer, looking for photos to print for an upcoming family event. And there it was, a photo of her and a man I didn't recognize, both smiling and standing outside that same jewelry store. The man was leaning in a little too closely for my comfort. In the background, I could see the same sign for Diamonds by Davis. My heart sank. I felt sick to my stomach, but my mind was racing. Now I had to decide how to confront her. This wasn't just about a bracelet. This was about trust, love, and the life I thought we were building together. I felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief. I needed proof, something concrete that I could use to confront her. I began to piece things together, waking up early to follow her and see where she went. That next Saturday, I spotted her car parked outside a swanky hotel downtown. My gut churned. I parked down the street, waiting and watching as she stepped out of the car, looking stunning in a black dress. My heart was pounding as I saw her being greeted by that same guy from the photo. I felt like I had just been punched in the gut. As I witnessed them embracing, I realized this wasn't just a fling. It was an affair. I sat there, frozen, grappling with the reality of what I was seeing. I had always imagined how I would feel if I ever caught her cheating, and now that moment was here, staring me in the face. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming urge for revenge. And then the wheels in my mind began to turn. What would I do with this information? How would I confront her? There had to be a way to expose this situation, not just for my sake, but for hers too. I needed to act, and I needed a plan. The moment I returned home that Saturday, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and completely betrayed. The image of Samantha with that guy, his arm wrapped around her waist, the way they laughed together, played over and over in my head like a broken record. I couldn't believe she would do this to us. The following days were a haze. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to gather my thoughts and plan. I wanted to hurt her the way she had hurt me, but I also wanted her to face the truth. It was time to dig deeper. I began poking around for more evidence. I had never been the jealous type, so this was all new territory for me. I started checking her social media accounts, which had become a veritable goldmine of information. There were pictures that she had posted, selfies with that luxury bracelet on her wrist, and comments from friends complimenting her on it. I didn't need to be a detective to see that this guy had not only bought her a bracelet but had woven himself into her life, and I was left out in the cold. One day, I noticed a message thread with a contact named Derek. I figured this had to be the guy, but when I clicked on the conversation, it was mostly innocuous, filled with boring work stuff. But I couldn't help but feel a surge of jealousy course through me as I read it. However, one message caught my eye toward the end. "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart dropped. I had no doubt in my mind that this was a reference to their clandestine meetings. I decided that I needed reliable evidence that would lead to a confrontation she couldn't weasel her way out of. I started following her once more. For several days, I watched as she continued her charade of normalcy. She would leave for work but would often end up at that hotel. It was a sickening cycle, and each time I saw her, my determination only grew. Finally, I decided to confront her. I had gathered enough evidence and was ready to lay it all out on the table. I waited for the right moment, and it came that Friday evening. I could feel my heart racing as I prepared for the conversation. I needed to be calm and collected, even though every part of me wanted to scream and shout. When she walked through the door that night, I was waiting for her, arms crossed and a look of determination on my face. "Samantha, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Her face fell and I could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, forcing a nonchalant tone, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "Don't play games with me," I said, cutting her off. "I know about Derek. I know you've been seeing him behind my back." Her expression shifted from confusion to anger in an instant. "You're being ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about." She tried to laugh it off, but her eyes betrayed her. "What do you think I found? Do you think I'm just going to accept your lies?" I pulled out my phone and waved it in front of her, showing the pictures, the receipts, and the messages. "There's a lot more than just a few texts here, Samantha." She started to stammer, desperately grasping for excuses. "I can explain. It's not what you think," she said, but her voice was shaky. She tried to spin a story about how he was just a friend, that she had never meant for things to go this far, but I wasn't buying it. I felt my blood boil as she continued to lie, the betrayal cutting deeper with every word. "You think I'm that stupid? You've been seeing him while I've been at work, haven't you?" I shot back, my patience wearing thin. "I swear it's not like that. I was going to tell you," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "No, you weren't," I snapped. "You've made your choice, and now you'll have to face the consequences." Her face paled, and I could see panic settling in as she realized I wasn't just going to let this slide. The confrontation left me feeling raw, like I had just laid my heart on the table only to watch her stomp on it. As she stood there, looking at me with a mix of regret and defiance, I felt a surge of anger boiling up inside me. I had to act. I couldn't let her walk away without facing the reality of what she had done. In that moment, I decided this wasn't just going to be about our marriage anymore. I wanted revenge, not just for me, but to make sure she would think twice before betraying someone again. I needed to expose her affair and the man behind it. No one, especially not her, should get away with this kind of deceit. And as the realization washed over me, I felt a dark satisfaction. This wasn't just about my hurt. This was about justice, and I was ready to serve it. The confrontation hung in the air, charged with tension and unresolved emotions. Samantha stood there, her face shifting through disbelief, regret, and finally anger. I could see her mind racing, desperate for a way to manipulate the narrative back in her favor. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had a plan now, and I intended to execute it flawlessly. "Whatever you think I've done," she began, trying to recover her composure, "you're blowing it all out of proportion. Derek and I were just talking. It's not a big deal." "A big deal?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face. This isn't just some harmless gossip, Samantha. You're having an affair." My voice was calm but firm, like a judge delivering the verdict. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words failed her. I could see the gears turning in her mind as she tried to figure out her next move. "You don't understand," she finally spat out. "You work all the time. You don't notice me anymore. I needed someone who appreciated me." Her words stung, but I brushed it off. I realized then that I couldn't allow myself to get caught up in her emotional manipulation. I needed to focus on what I was going to do next, how I was going to dismantle this situation and ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. As she continued to rant, I took a deep breath and let her finish. "You think this is just going to blow over?" I asked, my tone sharp. "I won't let that happen. You will have to deal with the fallout of this, and so will Derek." She fell silent, her bravado cracking as she absorbed what I was saying. I could see the realization dawning on her. I wasn't just going to forgive and forget. I was ready to take action. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my revenge. I knew that Derek, the man who had wormed his way into my life and bed, had a luxury jewelry store. It was a high-end business that catered to wealthy clientele, and judging by Samantha's expensive tastes, she had likely been receiving gifts from him. But that wasn't enough. I knew I needed more to expose him completely. I started researching the jewelry industry and quickly learned that many jewelers were tangled in shady dealings. Smuggling, tax evasion, and illicit sales were rampant in that world, especially among those who catered to the elite. I began to dig deeper, combing through public records and online forums. The more I found, the more I realized I could use this situation to my advantage. Late that Friday night, I found an article detailing how certain jewelers had been under investigation for smuggling conflict diamonds. I had a sinking feeling that Derek might be involved in something similar. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. If I could connect him to illegal activities, I could not only expose his affair with my wife, but also ensure he faced criminal charges. With every piece of information I gathered, I felt a dark satisfaction blossoming within me. I started documenting everything: the messages, the receipts, the photos I had taken of Samantha and Derek together. This would be my weapon, the ammunition I needed to take him down. The following week, I decided to pay a visit to the jewelry store. I dressed casually, concealing the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. As I walked into Diamonds by Davis, I was immediately struck by how lavish it was: the sparkling displays, the plush carpets, and the meticulously arranged jewelry cases. I could see why Samantha had been drawn to it. I approached the counter, trying to appear nonchalant. "Hi, I'm looking for some information on your jewelry," I said to the woman behind the counter, feigning interest. "I heard you have some unique pieces here." "Oh, absolutely, our collection is quite exclusive," she replied, beaming with pride. "Are you looking for something special?" "Actually," I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "I heard rumors about some issues with your supplier. Something about conflict diamonds." I watched as her smile faltered and her eyes flickered with uncertainty. "I just want to ensure I'm purchasing ethically." The woman seemed to recover quickly, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "We pride ourselves on sourcing our materials responsibly," she insisted, but the way she said it felt rehearsed. I pressed on, acting like I was just a concerned customer. "You know, I've heard some interesting things about the connections between certain jewelers and smuggling operations. I wouldn't want to get involved in anything illegal." I could see her begin to sweat as my words sank in. I wanted her to feel the pressure of the situation, for her to realize the implications of what I was implying. I left the store with a sense of satisfaction, knowing I had planted seeds of doubt in their operation. Over the next few days, I continued to gather more evidence against Derek. I reached out to a friend who worked in law enforcement, someone I had known since high school. I shared my suspicions and the evidence I had collected. He was intrigued and agreed to look into it further. It felt good to have a plan in motion, a way to not only expose Samantha's betrayal but to bring down the man who had seduced her. But I still had to confront her again. I wanted her to see the gravity of what was happening. I could let her think for a moment that she could just slip back into normalcy after what she had done. As I prepared for the next confrontation, I felt a mixture of anger and empowerment. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was taking charge, and I would make sure both Samantha and Derek faced the consequences of their actions. The truth was on my side, and I was ready to unleash it. It was time to put my plan into action. I couldn't delay the inevitable confrontation with Samantha any longer. I had everything I needed: the evidence, the support of my friend in law enforcement, and a growing sense of resolve. I wanted her to know that I wasn't going to be the passive spouse she could manipulate anymore. That evening, I gathered the documentation, everything I had collected over the past few weeks. I laid it all out on the dining table, creating a visual representation of her betrayal. Photos of her and Derek, receipts from the jewelry store, and text messages that left no room for denial clashed together like a damning collage. I stood back and admired my handiwork, feeling a sense of vindication. An empowerment swelled within me. When Samantha walked in, I could see the surprise flicker across her face as she took in the scene. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Sit down, Samantha. We need to talk," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. She hesitated but eventually complied, her expression shifting from confusion to apprehension. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I have evidence of your affair with Derek," I said, feeling a surge of adrenaline as I pointed to the evidence spread out before us. "You've been lying to me, and it's time you face the truth." Her eyes widened as she scanned the table, taking in the photos and texts. You're exaggerating," she stammered, her voice shaky. "I told you it's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like, Samantha. You've been with him. You've been lying to me while I've been at work. You've been living a double life, and I have proof." I could feel the anger boiling inside me again as I spoke, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I was going to tell you," she cried, her composure crumbling. "I just didn't know how. I thought maybe I could just end it." "End what?" I shot back. "The affair, or the lies? You've had months to come clean, and instead you chose to sneak around." Every word felt like a punch to the gut. "You made your choice, and now you need to face the consequences." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the realization wash over her, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to make sure Derek pays for what he's done," I said with steely determination. "And that means exposing him. I have connections, Samantha. I know people who can look into his business, and I'm going to make sure they do." Her expression shifted again, morphing into a mix of fear and desperation. "You can't do that. He'll lose everything. I'll lose everything. Please don't take it that far. Don't you see? It's too late for that. You think I'm going to let him walk away unscathed after everything? After you've betrayed me?" My voice grew louder, the anger bubbling over. "You don't get to play the victim here. You made your bed with him, and now you're going to lie in it." Samantha looked small and fragile, her bravado shattered. "I never meant to hurt you," she started, but I cut her off. "It doesn't matter what you meant. What matters is what you did. You lied, you cheated, and now you're going to face the fallout." I watched as her eyes filled with tears, but instead of feeling pity, I felt a sense of vindication. I wasn't the one who had done wrong here. She had chosen to betray me, and now it was time for her to understand the weight of her choices. I moved to the coffee table and picked up my phone. "I'm making a call," I said firmly. "You can either come clean to the authorities with me, or I can let them figure it out on their own. Either way, Derek is going down." "Please don't do this," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "You don't want to ruin his life. I'll end things with him. Just give me a chance." I shook my head. "It's not about him anymore. It's about you and the trust you shattered. I will not let you wiggle your way out of this." With that, I dialed my friend's number, my heart racing as the phone rang. Samantha's eyes widened in horror, but I remained resolute. "Hey, Mike, it's me," I said when he answered. "I need to talk to you about something serious. Can we meet tomorrow?" "What's going on?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. "I have information about a jewelry store and some illegal dealings. I think it connects to a personal matter, and I need your help." "Sure thing. Let's meet at the diner at noon," he replied. I hung up and turned back to Samantha, who looked like a ghost. "You see, this is what happens when you betray someone. You think you can just walk away from this without consequences. I can fix this, I swear. Just give me time," she pleaded, desperation clawing at her voice. But I was done listening to her excuses. I couldn't trust her anymore, and the more she begged, the more resolute I became. The thrill of revenge coursed through me, fueling my desire to see her punished for the betrayal. The next day I met Mike at the diner. We sat down, and I laid out everything I had gathered: photos, messages, receipts, and my suspicions about Derek's operation. As I spoke, I watched Mike's expression change from confusion to concern as it became clear just how deep this betrayal ran. "I can't believe she would do this to you," he said, shaking his head. "And if Derek is involved in illegal activities, we need to act fast. I'll bring this to the precinct and see what we can dig up." A wave of relief washed over me. I had someone in my corner, someone who understood the severity of the situation. And for the first time since I discovered the affair, I felt empowered. "I want you to make sure he pays for what he's done," I said firmly. "Not just for me, but for all the other people he's deceived. This isn't just a personal vendetta, it's about justice." Mike nodded, his expression serious. "I'll make sure we get the evidence we need. Just sit tight, we'll handle it from here." As I left the diner that day, a sense of purpose surged within me. I was no longer a victim. I was taking control of my life and my narrative. I would expose Samantha and Derek, ensuring that both would face the consequences of their betrayal. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. It hurt to let go of the life I thought I had with her, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I wouldn't let her lies define me. I was stronger than that, and I was ready to reclaim my life. The wheels were in motion, and I was finally ready to see justice served. The following days were a blur of anticipation and anxiety. I was waiting for Mike to follow through on our conversation, and every moment felt like an eternity. I had never been one to seek revenge. I was more the type to let things roll off my back. But this was different. This was a betrayal that cut so deep, and I felt compelled to do something about it. As I sat at home, I replayed the events over and over in my mind. I tried to picture what was happening behind the scenes, what Mike was doing to uncover the truth about Derek and his shady operations. My phone buzzed, breaking me from my reverie. It was a message from Mike. "Got some info. Can we meet tonight?" My heart raced at the thought of finally getting answers. I quickly replied, confirming a time and place. As I prepared to head out, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I had no idea what Mike had uncovered, but I knew it could change everything. When I arrived at the diner, I spotted Mike at a booth in the corner. He looked serious, his expression tense as I slid into the seat across from him. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice low. "Okay, so I did some digging," he began, glancing around as if to ensure no one was listening. "Derek's store has indeed been involved in some illegal activities. I got in touch with a couple of sources, and they confirmed that he's being investigated for smuggling conflict diamonds." I felt a rush of vindication. "So, he really is involved in something illegal?" Mike nodded. "Yes, and it gets worse. They believe he's been sourcing diamonds from questionable places, and there have been several complaints about his operations. He's been flying under the radar, but they're gathering enough evidence to make an arrest." "Good," I said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "I want to make sure Samantha knows I had a role in this. I want her to understand the extent of what she's done." Mike hesitated, his brow furrowing. "I understand your anger, but you need to be careful. This is serious. If you push too hard, it could backfire on you." "I'm aware of the risks," I replied, feeling more resolute than ever. "But this isn't just about revenge. It's about exposing the truth and making sure they face the consequences." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, but let's make sure we do this the right way. If we can get enough evidence together, we can turn it over to the authorities and let them handle it. You don't want to get yourself involved in something that could escalate." I nodded, appreciating his concern. "Then let's do it. I want to make sure Derek loses everything, just like he tried to take everything from me. I'll even confront Samantha again, and I'll let her know what's happening." "Just be careful," Mike warned again, but there was an edge of understanding in his voice. He knew how deeply Samantha's betrayal had cut, and he could see the fire in my eyes. I was determined. There was no turning back now. The next day, I decided to confront Samantha again. I needed her to understand that I wasn't just sitting idly by, I was taking action. When she came home that evening, I waited for her in the living room, the tension thick in the air. "What now?" she snapped, her irritation palpable. She must have sensed the shift in my demeanor. "I know about Derek's business dealings," I said, watching her expression change from annoyance to confusion. The authorities are onto him for smuggling conflict diamonds. It's only a matter of time before he gets arrested." She looked genuinely startled. "What? You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I replied, my voice steady. "And let me remind you, I have the proof too. Back it up. I'm not going to let you just walk away from this unscathed." Her eyes darted around the room and I could see the panic rising within her. "You can't do this. What about me? What about our life together?" "What life?" I shot back, the bitterness rising. "You threw that away when you decided to betray me. You turned your back on our marriage, and now you want me to feel sorry for you. I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she pleaded. "I thought it was just a fling, a way to find some excitement. I never wanted it to come to this." "But it did," I replied coldly, cutting her off. "And now you're going to face the consequences. I'm not going to let you hide behind your excuses any longer." She sat there, her defiance melting away, leaving only despair. "What do you want from me?" "Acceptance," I said, my voice firm. "I want you to acknowledge that what you did was wrong. And I want you to understand that there's no escaping the fallout." She looked like she was about to cry, the realization hitting her that her actions would come back to haunt her. "Please, don't let them arrest him. I can fix this. I'll end things with Derek, I promise." "That's not how this works," I said, feeling my resolve harden. "You can't just sweep this under the rug. You've made your choices, and now we both have to deal with the repercussions." I could see the tears brimming in her eyes, the weight of her guilt crashing down on her. "I know I messed up, but I never wanted things to go this far. Please, give me a chance to make it right." I felt a pang of sadness at her desperation, but it was overshadowed by the anger I had bottled up for so long. "You had your chance, Samantha. I'm taking action, and there's nothing you can say to change that." I left her standing there, her pleas echoing in my ears as I walked away. I couldn't allow myself to be swayed by her words anymore. I had made my decision, and now I had to see it through. The next day, I received an unexpected call from Mike. "We've got enough evidence to move forward," he said. "The authorities are ready to make an arrest, and they want to know if you want to be present when it happens." The thought of facing Derek while he was being arrested sent a rush of adrenaline through me. "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. "I want to be there when he realizes the consequences of his actions." "Okay, we'll set it up. Just be aware it might get messy," Mike warned. "I'm ready for it," I said firmly. As the day of the arrest approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and excitement. I had been through so much, and now I was finally going to see justice served. I would be there to witness Derek's downfall, and I could finally begin to move on from the pain Samantha had caused me. I wasn't sure what the future held for me, but I was ready to embrace it. I had taken control of my life, and no one would ever make me feel powerless again. This was my moment, and I was determined to make the most of it. The next chapter of my life awaited, and I was ready to turn the page. The day of the arrest felt surreal. I couldn't shake the mixture of anticipation and dread that coursed through me. I arrived at the precinct early, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for Mike to arrive. The last vestiges of my life with Samantha felt like they were slipping away, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality in every moment. When Mike walked in, he looked serious but resolute. "You ready for this?" he asked, his tone even. "I have to be," I replied, steeling myself for what was to come. "I need to see him face the consequences." "It's going to happen soon," Mike said, checking his watch. "The team is moving in on the jewelry store. We'll be there to support the operation, but you should prepare yourself for anything." I nodded, trying to focus on the moment. I was finally confronting not just Derek, but the entire situation that had shattered my life. I had spent weeks preparing for this day, and now that it was here, I felt an unexpected calmness wash over me. I was reclaiming my narrative. We arrived at the jewelry store, the bustling atmosphere feeling strangely incongruous with the weight of what was happening. I watched as police officers moved in, their presence commanding attention and instantly shifting the energy within the shop. I could feel my heart racing as I waited for the confrontation I had been dreaming of. Moments later, I saw Derek being led out of the store in handcuffs. His face was a mask of confusion and disbelief, as if he could fathom what was happening. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest as he saw me. His eyes widened in recognition, and I could see the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. "You," he shouted, his voice dripping with fury and disbelief. "This is your doing, isn't it?" "Absolutely," I replied, feeling a surge of empowerment. "You thought you could take everything from me and get away with it. Now you're facing the consequences." Derek struggled against the officers, his bravado fading as the officers tightened their grip. "You have no idea what you're doing. You're ruining everything," he shouted, but the desperation in his voice only made me feel stronger. "I'm making sure you won't hurt anyone else," I said coldly. "You and Samantha deserve every bit of this. Enjoy the ride." As he was shoved into the back of the police car, I felt a strange sense of closure. This was the moment I had longed for, the moment where justice was finally being served. I watched as the car drove away, taking him with it, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. When I returned home later that evening, I found Samantha sitting on the couch, her face pale and drawn. "I can't believe you did this," she said, her voice trembling. "You ruined everything." "No, you did," I replied, my voice firm. "You chose to betray me, and now you're going to face the consequences of that betrayal. I won't let you manipulate me any longer." "I was going to leave him," she protested, tears streaming down her face. "You have to believe me. I never wanted it to go this far." "Maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to cheat," I shot back. "This isn't about excuses anymore. You need to accept what you've done." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words, the weight of our crumbling marriage hanging thick in the air. I felt a mixture of sadness and relief as I stared at her. This was the end of our story, a story I had once thought would be filled with love and trust. "I never wanted to hurt you," she finally said, her voice breaking. "It doesn't matter what you wanted," I said, feeling my heart harden. "What matters is what you did. You chose this path, and now you have to live with the fallout." As she sat there, broken and defeated, I realized that I had finally taken control of my life. I was no longer a victim of her choices. I was a survivor, ready to move forward. I had confronted the pain, faced the truth, and taken action. In the days that followed, I focused on healing. I spent time with friends, rediscovered old hobbies, and began to rebuild my life. I found comfort in the fact that I had stood up for myself, that I had not allowed Samantha's betrayal to define me. Instead, I forged a new path, one that was filled with hope and possibility. As I reflected on the entire experience, I realized that I had learned valuable lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of standing up for oneself. I would carry those lessons with me as I moved forward, knowing that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. And while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they would no longer own me. I was ready for whatever came next, and for the first time in a long time I felt free. The future was mine to shape, and I was determined to make the most of it.